Hello, my name is Jonathan Richardson. Hello, my name is Jonathan Richardson, and I am a physical science and biology teacher at Dublin Kaufman High School. And my project here or my personal learning network here is on project-based learning, or PBL. And what you're watching right now is a hopefully short video of a little tour of my journey to further understand and then eventually implement a project-based learning activity. And in the end, this is all going towards the idea of helping my students develop 21st century skills. And in education, we think of 21st century skills as the 4 C's, creative thinking, critical thinking, communication, and collaboration. So for this project, I chose project-based learning. And the reason why I chose it was basically 2 reasons why I did this. The first one was I feel like I kind of already had a little bit of a taste of project learning by accident in just an attempt in my class to create meaningful projects. I feel like I've created followed some of the steps of what would eventually be project-based learning, and even just kind of having a little taste of it, I saw students who were much more motivated in what they were learning, much more engaged, and I saw much better results. And then the second reason was actually talking to my wife, and I was reflecting on 21st century skills, and I was reading off some of the things, some of those, the list of objectives, and when I finished, she looked up at me and said, John, you basically just described my job. My wife is a materials researcher at Honda, and she works in the research and development department. She told me my job is basically I'm given a problem from my superiors. I am to figure out how to solve that problem, and I investigate and research. I eventually implement it, and then I share my results with my superiors. Sometimes they give me critiques and tell me that I need to do certain parts again, in which I just kind of repeat the cycle, which I realize is also actually is how most science is done in the real world, where you're given a problem, you need to find a creative way to solve that problem, collaborate with others, and then communicate your results or your solution to the community or your superiors or your bosses. And so with those kinds of a match, I felt like project-based learning is so real. It's a perfect match for developing those 21st century skills that we find in the real world applications, such as being a research and development engineer at Honda. So what I'm going to be doing in this video here is just kind of talking a little bit about what is project-based learning, a little bit about its structure, and some of the research behind what is project-based learning, some of its benefits, its strengths, and then some resources you can use to help you create a project-based learning unit or activity. Then finally, I use these research and resources to give an example of how to create a project-based learning unit lesson. And then finally talking about how that relates back to the standards and skills that we want our kids to develop using such as collaboration and obviously science standards that we hope that they meet. So with that said, what is project-based learning? Project-based learning is a teaching method that has students collaborate, investigate, and respond to an authentic question, problem, or challenge. And quickly in starting my research looking at how to do project-based learning, I realized that there's actually 2 PBLs. There's project-based learning and there's problem-based learning. And there are some differences. They are mostly foundationally the same. In fact, actually, Problem-based learning is called is actually a type of project-based learning, since a project the final product can focus on solving a problem. So, but there are a few differences in their history and a little bit in their implementation, but foundationally they are the same. They both emphasize 21st century skills. They are student focused, and they have an authentic, real world based foundation. Project based, it's a little bit more of a proposed question or challenge. Problem based, it's more or less case study based on this information from a case study. Can we find a solution to this problem? And that's why I got it started actually in the medical field. So I'm actually going to be focusing on project-based learning, just because it is a wider scale and encompasses kind of more of what I'm hoping to do for my students. So going to that, let's talk about the structure of project-based learning. And there are a lot of different models to kind of show this, and this is the one I kind of found that was the one that was the most specific. Every other model I found maybe only have 4 parts, but they would incorporate 2 or 3 of these elements here. And this was created at the Buck Institute, which proposed that there are basically 2 criteria for a good project. It must be meaningful to the students, and it must have an educational purpose. And to do that, you have to meet 8 essential elements to make an effective project, and thus be the foundation for project-based learning. We have the significant content here, which is kind of more on the teacher end about the beginning of the planning. What do you want them to learn? What is the purpose of this in terms of science standards or Common Core? What is the end product for them supposed to be about their learning? What do they need to know? Or sorry, a need to know. A need to know is about why is this important to the students? What is this relevance? A very common example is that there's a lake, a small lake in a community that people like to swim in, but it's become overpopulated and they've had to close the lake. Students would want to know why they close the lake and why they can, or what they can do to go back swimming into it. This gives them a sense of motivation to understand what's happening. So the first 2 are really kind of talking about the teacher planning, like or before you start. And then it goes to the driving question. And this is the open-ended question or ill-structured format or goal that the students really need to work towards this entire time. How can we clean the lake so that students can, or so that people can swim in them again? From there, is you need to be able to provide an opportunity for students to give choice on how they want to answer the question or challenge. This can be very challenging for teachers, and research even shows that it's very challenging for teachers to kind of give up that control to let them have the choice. If it helps as kind of a compromise, you can provide a sample or a wide range of choices. Maybe here's 5 different formats you can do to do this, but you still need to provide them an opportunity to make multiple choices. Obviously, we need to incorporate these 21st century skills. So within that structure or the choices you give them, make sure that there's chances for them to reflect and communicate, collaborate. The more choices you can give them, the more creative they can be in their solutions. Provide in-depth inquiry. Don't just focus on the driving question. Help them to reflect upon supplemental questions like what is the lake polluted with? What's causing that pollution? How can we stop that from happening? So just helping them kind of see the whole project or the whole situation. Critique and revision. This one's very important that students need to reflect upon their work, and that's where the teacher role is very, very important as a facilitator to help them think about what they're doing and how they can improve. And then probably the most important one I feel in my my limited taste of project-based learning is the public audience, and it's not always just a teacher. It's not even always just the class. This is most effective when you can bring a real world element into the classroom. So for the lake example, having someone from City Hall come in to listen to, or have them present to City Hall about how they can, methods that they can use to try and clean up the lake. This provides a real life motivation for the students, and they really start to see the authenticity of your activity or this project. Now for the research and resources for project-based learning, there is a lot of research that supports or describes project-based learning. Some of it's very broad, some of it's very, very specific, some is qualitative, some is quantitative. There's a lot of different research out there, and this was really a good foundation for me to learn a lot about the depth and breadth of project-based learning, and then really focus on a lot of ones on how, where are the strengths of it, where are the potential pitfalls. For example, here, just one here by Belland was really a very broad one, focusing really just about student roles and what students thought about it and how they collaborated, and it was very observational. But it told me a lot about how students feel about taking a specific role within the collaboration process. We have this one by Lee that focuses on actually the teacher perspective about, are they being allowing enough student choice and voice in there, or the challenges to become too structured. You got to let them have that opportunity to be creative. A similar one to that one would be Dr. Ravitz, which is talking about teachers as well, about how technology can actually be a hindrance to this, because if the teacher's spending more time learning about how to use the technology or what it is, then the students aren't using it to its full ability. This one here by Pease is about what actually are some of the most important parts of the collaboration process of project-based learning, finding that actually student engagement and thus motivation is much more important for the end result than, say, cognitive ability of the student, which is very uplifting when you think about being able to use project-based learning on a whole range of students. It doesn't just have to be just for gifted students, which actually a lot of the research for project or PBL is based on gifted students. So all this research here just provided a lot of background and detail for, like I said, the breadth and depth of project-based learning. And some of the resources that I used and can be used are, for example, the Belk Institute for Education, the BIE. This is the Center for All Things Project-Based Learning. They provide a lot of research literature, lessons, projects, provide professional development. For example, if I go up here, or if I can go to their project search, and so I can pick from various sources. I'm going to do science and let's say a biology lesson. And if I can kind of look through the long list of suggestions that they have. I might be able to pick a topic. I talk about genetics, talking about the identical genetics between twins. And it actually provides different levels of it. If you're kind of new to this is kind of a nice segue. Some of the experienced ones are really hard, and it takes a really specific mind frame as a teacher to really do that. This is a fantastic resource. Edutopia is a great resource for seeing how other teachers have done this. It really provides a lot of blogs and articles talking about how project-based learning can be implemented. And this last one here, the science